The sun had dipped low over the dusty plains, painting the sky in bruised shades of orange and violet as the last light of day kissed the earth. The cattle had long since wandered to the far pastures. The wind carried the smell of hay and leather, and the world seemed to fall into the kind of silence only a lonely cowboy could truly understand. For years, Jeb Colton had ridden the ranges alone. His only companions, the creak of his saddle and the low murmur of the desert wind. He had no family left, no one waiting in a warm-lit cabin for him to return. Life had become a rhythm of survival. Mend the fences, ride the herd, sleep beneath the stars. And though the world called him tough, deep down he carried an emptiness that no amount of whiskey or wide open land could ever fill. That night, as he walked past the hay bales stacked near the barn, something stirred. At first he thought it was just the wind shifting the stalks, but then he caught the faintest sound, a muffled breath, sharp, urgent, almost frightened. His instincts sharpened, hand drifting near the handle of his revolver. But when he leaned closer, he didn't find an outlaw or a thief. He found a girl. She was crouched inside the shadow of the haystack, her blue dress smeared with dirt, strands of her dark hair tangled across her tear-stained face. Her arms bore scratches as if she had run through brambles, and her eyes, wide, desperate, searching, looked at him as though he were both a threat and her only hope. Jeb froze. He had seen many things in his years, but never a girl hiding like a frightened bird on his ranch. He crouched slowly, lowering his voice to something gentler than he had used in years. "Easy there, darlin'. Ain't no reason to fear me. What's your name?" She didn't answer, only pressed herself harder against the hay, clutching the fabric of her dress like it was the last thing keeping her alive. Her lips trembled, but no words came. Jeb extended a gloved hand, palm open, steady as the land itself. "I ain't gonna hurt you. You're safe here. Whoever you're running from, they ain't got the right to touch you no more." At last, after what felt like an eternity, her hand moved, hesitant, shaking, but she placed it in his, and in that single moment Jeb felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just a girl lost in the dust. This was someone whose soul had been running, hiding, fighting, maybe for longer than he could imagine. And somehow, fate had brought her straight to him. He helped her to her feet, noticing how she winced as though her legs had carried her farther than they were meant to go. "Come on," he said, his voice carrying both command and comfort. "Let's get you out of the cold. You don't belong in no haystack." She followed him into the dim light of his barn, her steps slow, her breaths uneven. The night wrapped around them, and for the first time in years Jeb felt like the silence was filled with something more than loneliness. It was filled with purpose. He poured her a tin cup of water, set a blanket across her shoulders, and waited. Finally she spoke, her voice small, broken but filled with truth. "They were gonna take me. I didn't know where else to go." Jeb's jaw tightened. He didn't know who they were, but he knew one thing. Whoever had driven her to hide in hay and shadows was someone who would never touch her again. "You listen to me," he said, meeting her gaze with the steady fire of a man who had made a silent oath. "You won't ever need to hide again. Not while I'm here. I promise you that." Something in her eyes flickered then. Hope, fragile but alive. And in that barn, beneath the tired creak of the rafters and the whisper of the wind, through the plains a bond was born. He was a lonely cowboy who had lived too long in silence, and she was a broken girl searching for safety. Together they would write a story neither had ever expected. From that night forward, Jeb knew his life was no longer just about tending cattle or watching sunsets alone. It was about protecting her, guiding her, and proving to her that in a world so cruel, there still existed someone who would fight, someone who would stand, someone who would never let her fall. The plains stretched far and wide, and dangers still lingered in the shadows. But Jeb's promise was iron. No matter what storms might rise, she would never hide again. Not from him. Not from the world. Not from life itself.